Hey everyone, I'm Brian. This is Voice in the Wilderness, where truth cuts through the noise, where fire meets faith, and where a generation hopefully is called out of the shadows and into the light. Now, I'm not here to play church with you. We're here to sort of shake the gates of hell with the power of the gospel related to local news topics and local social topics that are happening, especially in Queensland, but around Australia. Because the time for silence is over. The wilderness is crying out, and we must be the voice in that wilderness. So, the topic today is in Queensland, families and individuals are being pushed to the brink of homelessness at exactly the same time that some local governments are turning up the pressure on those already that are rough sleeping in their cars, sleeping in tents, sleeping on park benches, sleeping underneath park tables, or just sleeping in the bushes with a piece of cardboard or a sheet pulled over them. Now, the result is it's actually a cruel paradox what these councils are doing. People unable to afford a place to live are simultaneously being penalised for simply trying to survive daily out in these public spaces. The cost pressures of living are astronomical these days. They're forcing people out. Rent is rising. Cost of living is soaring. I see it. You have to see it as well. I get people telling me there's no tent cities in Australia. August. You just need to open your eyes and look, because this problem, it could happen to you tomorrow. There's so many people that are one paycheck away from being out of their house and living with no roof over their head. So just remember that. Now, all these issues are converging into a housing crisis. Now, in one sample region, the waiting list for social housing has reached 4,421 people. That's the longest in Queensland, and I believe that's the longest ever in Queensland. Many families are reporting that every dollar is committed to basic bills and rent, leaving no buffer zone, no emergency fund, which many of Australians have enjoyed for years, for decades, having an emergency fund of finances there that they can fall back on. Now, when a job is lost or rent increase hits, they've now not got no safety net. And the only alternative is to go and live in the car, in a tent, on the streets, under the benches. But there's now a problem with that. We are finding more and more enforcement and displacement by the local city councils. The local councils there are increasingly issuing threats of fines and compliance orders aimed at people sleeping rough or camping on public land. Now, I can understand for grey nomads, backpackers, things like that, that are just choosing to live on public land because they don't want to have to separate with a dollar or two or 10, 20. But when we're talking about the homeless, we're talking about a whole different demographic. Now, I'll give you an example. The city of Moreton Bay, a friend of mine, Jay, from the Slippery Slope podcast, has done a couple of stories on what's been happening in Moreton Bay with the homeless there. But the Moreton Bay Council has issued compliance notices threatening fines up to $8,065 if tents remain on public land. The notices have warned the people living in their cars or tents to vacate immediately or face massive penalties. Now, I know someone local to me who's living in a caravan that someone else dumped in a private rest area, and the council have now, just because he's got no way of towing the caravan, he's got nowhere to go and no other means, the council have just hit him with an $8,000 fine, which he's got no means to pay. He'll end up more than likely in jail, or it'll go to Spur and he'll accrue other debts to go with that. The council know he's got no means to pay it. They know he's got nowhere to go, but they don't care. He's a blight on the picture of what they want their area to be like. And there's no compassion. There's just social adhesion. And that's what these councils want these days. Now, some people are given as little as 2 days' notice. In the Gold Coast City Council region. A motion was endorsed to fine people sleeping rough in public spaces as well. Yet, although the threat of fines is real, enforcement is inconsistent. One council admitted no fines had yet been issued, even though notices were given. That's only very rare councils now. The councils are getting out there. I know the council that is where I am, they had trouble keeping their enforcement officers, their rangers and that. So they've just taken on a whole new lot, retrained them. And these ones, I've been assured by the council, will go out, do their job. They will kick these people out of the places. They will issue these fines. And we're seeing what I just said before, an $8,000 fine when they know he's got nothing to pay, no means to pay it. Now, also, we're seeing city centre makeovers affecting rough sleepers. Is it to affect rough sleepers or is it for the beautification? Now, I know for a fact in the regional city of Bundaberg in Queensland, they're initiating a new Safe Spaces, Thriving Places campaign. And it was launched by the Bundaberg Regional Council to revitalise the CBD. Well, that's what the council said to the open public. That's what they said to the media. And that's what they put in their Bundaberg Now newspaper, which is the council's own propaganda newspaper. They own it. So this was launched because they aim to include increased cleaning of the CBD pathways to bring in more compliance presence and an infrastructure review. Now, the local media reported that some actions appear less about social inclusion and more about making it uncomfortable for rough sleepers. One article titled "Lock the Doors Inside an Aussie Town" described how the campaign included language like local feral CBD, referring to the people who are sleeping rough, and focused on rough sleeping and unsanitary behaviour, which none of us should have to put up with unsanitary behaviour. I understand that there are people who take drugs and are addicted to alcohol, but why push them out further from the city centre to the residential areas? People aren't going to tolerate that. Why not just try and find them help instead? Now, some people in the community claim that the pressure washing, the increased cleaning that we've never seen before in that town, are enforcement, or the enforcement they're bringing in are designed to discourage the homeless people from using the areas in the city centre, areas where the toilets are open, where there's plenty of light, where they know they're safe, basically or effectively displacing them rather than offering housing alternatives. It's, they've admitted to people that they want to keep the areas wet because people can't sleep where there's water on the ground. And I think that's a pretty low act. That's not showing compassion. So we'll stop and let's look at the appearance versus reality of this. From someone looking outside, local councils and the state government may appear to be doing something. They launch campaigns, they hold consultations, they advocate for data, spend all this money, and then they roll out cleanups because that's what they really want. They want this issue cleaned up. They want to wash this problem away. They launch the campaigns, but it's not, the campaigns aren't publicly stating what they're really thinking in the offices. For example, with Bundaberg's project, the Safe Places, Safe Spaces, Thriving Places, I'll get it right one day because it's such a mouthful. Their project states that they will advocate to relevant government representatives and departments about the need for accountability and transparency and increased support in relation to homelessness. But I know they asked the homeless organisations, the ones that help the homeless, what they can do about it, but I don't think they really paid attention. They just needed to show that they were asking questions. But critics argue that the support for people actually at risk of homelessness is lacking, very much so. The focus shifts towards public space compliance, enforcement, beautification of the city centres, rather than affordable homes, structural prevention, or wraparound support services. one quote that we had: homelessness is not a crime, it's a crisis. When someone has lost everything, the last thing we should do is take away their tent or the last few belongings they have yet. Because that's what the councils are doing. They are taking these people's last remaining roof over their head, the tent, and whatever possessions are in those tents, and taking into the dump. Those possessions are these people, everything they've got in the world. And remember, this can happen to anyone at any time. Families are being driven into homelessness by unaffordable housing, by greedy landlords and cost of living pressures. Now, my wife and I have just moved into a caravan because we couldn't afford to keep paying the rent that was going up, and our rent was lower than most. We had a landlord that kept the rent lower, but it still kept rising all the time, and we couldn't afford it. So we're living in a caravan now. The governments are to blame, and to a less likely or slightly less extent, the local councils for trying to wash the issue away, as we see with some councils like Bundaberg. And make no mistakes, these council mayors, the CEOs, they're meeting with these other councils in forums to discuss what measures they can take to displace these people further. They're prioritising compliance and removal of rough sleeping from public areas, rather than increasing affordable housing stock, hostels, more accessible mental health treatment and diagnosis. The list goes on with what they can't be bothered doing, not what they can be bothered doing, which they try to spruik, but it's what they can't be bothered doing. Now, campaigns that appear to be about safe, thriving public spaces may in practice be mechanisms of displacement for those who have nowhere else to go. Without housing, services, prevention, displacement simply moves the problem rather than solving it. And as I said earlier, the problem up in Bundaberg is they're forcing these people, washing them off out of the city centre, but they're forcing them out into the suburbs. And are you really going to put up with that as a resident in those suburbs? The councils are putting your rates up. They're putting everything up. Do you really want to put up with them pushing the homeless out into your areas as well, where you have to live? Now, I want you to just for a moment consider one family. 2 working parents, a mother, a father, kids however many, most have 2 or 3, paying rent that keeps creeping up and up. One job loss or a pay cut, which are common these days, and they're suddenly on the edge. They've got no backup fund. Imagine being told that you have 2 days to vacate a public space that you've had to go to with all of your possessions. It might be a trolley of items, it might be a car full of stuff or a tent. Now, the council threatens you with an $8,000 fine if you don't move in those 2 days. The state housing waiting list is long. You're told the city centre is being improved, but your only roof is a tarp under the bridge or the tent under the bridge. And we're seeing that more and more. Now, it's not enough to ask where will they go, because they've got nowhere to go at the moment. The real question is, why are we reducing the places that people might go at the same time as we're increasing the reasons they are forced to leave home? There's plenty of council buildings empty. There's plenty of council land and state government owned land where they could build even just demountable homes for people to stay in, but they won't do it. They have got more important issues to think about, like the trans ideology in state schools and things like that. That's changing the curriculum, changing the education. They would more concentrate on those social indoctrination issues than seeing the real issues that are in our streets that we see that many of us walk past and ignore, acting like these people don't exist. I saw one comment and a news story from someone in Gin. It was a business owner, and she said to her kids, when we go to Bundaberg, don't look the people in the eyes, because that will just antagonise them. That is absolute bull. It's that sort of talk that causes this divide, this fear even more. And I rebuke that person for saying that. So, okay, I won't carry on about that. We've been going for 15 minutes now, but I'm faith-based. So I'm going to bring in a couple of verses of scripture to sort of bring this home to light for the Christians out there. And even if you're not a Christian, just listen to the wording and see how it relates to this story. Firstly, I want to share with you Isaiah 58, verse 7. Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house? When thou seest the naked, that thou coverest them, and that thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh. You seeing someone, the best thing you can do with your time, it's one thing to donate to these big charities like St. Vincent de Paul, Lifeline and that, but they do a lot for a certain group. And they're a business still. They're out to make money. They're not out to make people's lives so much better. They are there to make money, big pay packets for their CEOs and all of their office staff and that, while volunteers run the stores for them. Now, the second one, Proverbs, to carry on to that, if you want to give to the small charities, the ones that you see out there on the streets helping these people. Now, there's one other thing. If you don't have money to give, why not find one of these small charities? Volunteer your time, offer your time, because that is a payment as well. That is helping. That is helping the Lord. That is helping these people. And that's helping these small organizations that don't get these millions of dollars like the big charities do. So let's go into Proverbs 14, verse 31. He that oppresseth the poor reproacheth his maker, but he that honoureth him hath mercy on the poor. And then we'll go on to James 2, verses 15 to 17 as our last one. I won't carry on with any more for you because you get the idea. If a brother or sister be naked, that means your brothers and sisters, your neighbours be naked, means wanting, needing, and destitute of daily food. Even so faith, it hath not works, is dead. So if you see these churches and they're not doing anything, they're doing things for people overseas, things like that, but they're not doing anything to substantially help those destitute in their own community, then really, how alive is their faith? I think it's dead, because they don't care. Their community is their community, and they should be looking after their community as number one. Charity starts at home, in your community. Anyway, my friends, that's all for this topic for this week. Hope you've not so much enjoyed it, but I hope it's been eye-opening for you. I'll try and put some stats and some data into the description, but please hit like, hit subscribe, comment, because I read all the comments and I will get back to you. And then please share this video out. If you think there's people that need to see this in government, wherever, please share it out. God bless you all, my friends. Remember, I love you all. As a Christian, I love you all. But he will always love you so much more. Even if you've turned your back on him, he still loves you. Bless you.